One landlord tried to make affordable housing for people, but after a 5-year tenant moved out, he was greeted by a pile of garbage. I'm Tony, and this is Real Estate Investing and Landlord News.
I try to make affordable housing for people, but when they come in and completely destroy a place, it's hard to do that, you know?
He filled a dumpster more times than he wanted to count, then started on repairs.
I spent $23,000 redoing this. All new carpeting, all new doors.
And he shakes his head at the damage.
Gas shut off in the wintertime. They cut a hole in the glass and ran a stovepipe out the window so they could heat the bedroom.
This isn't the first time he's been blindsided.
One lady, she took one room and just made a litter box out of it. Just threw the litter right on the floor.
Adding to the frustration, not getting the help he hoped for when calling police.
It's a civil matter, but if in a hotel, if you did that, you'd go to jail for destruction of property. But us landlords, we can't get any help on that.
All right, so I have an interesting article for you today, and it's coming out of South Dakota. I don't talk about South Dakota a lot, but South Dakota isn't known for being a place that is not, friendly to landlords. It's actually a pretty landlord-friendly place, okay? But there are still problem tenants there. The difference between a place that is landlord-friendly and a place that isn't landlord-friendly is there's actual solutions to those sort of problems, which means that we can evict those tenants easily. We can raise the rents up to meet the market rate to handle inflation, and we can have a fair chance of being able to run our business. Now, that doesn't mean that every landlord within the place is good. No, there's a few bad apples, but as I've mentioned many times before, the bad apples are minuscule in comparison to the actual number of landlords. So in my comment section, I actually had somebody who said, there's a lot more bad apples than you think. And I'm like, no, there's not. So I just want to give you a quick example of what I'm talking about here, okay? So everyone who rents even a single room in their house, or if they have a single rental property, or if they own 1,000 rental units, right? They are a landlord. So you have a lot of people who would be considered landlords, and you know what? Most of them have no issues whatsoever with their tenants. You hear the stories about a few bad apples here and there, right? You could add those stories up and you probably count them on both hands, So, even in a small size city where you have hundreds of landlords, you might have 10 bad ones. You can have hundreds of landlords out there, right? So let's say Omaha, Nebraska. I don't know how many people are landlords in Omaha, but with the whole metropolitan area, there's about 900,000 people who live here, right? So imagine for a moment there that, there are 5,000 landlords total. Well, you might hear about 10 bad ones on the news, okay? So 10 out of 5,000, you do the math. That is a minuscule number. We're talking about less than 1% of bad apples. And yet here everybody thinks, all landlords are bad. It's a joke. It's a complete joke. It's a farce. It's not true. And we know it. So this landlord is bringing their story of, the things they've experienced as a landlord and why they say, hey, it isn't always the landlord's fault. And I'm going to go further and say 99% of the time it isn't the landlord's fault. 99% of the time it's the fault of the tenant. Okay, so before I get into the article, go ahead, hit the like, subscribe button, leave a comment down below and let me know what you think. So how often do you think that there are actual bad landlords out there? Okay, do you think that there's a lot more than I'm saying there are? Do you think that there's just a epidemic, like 60 or 70% of all landlords are bad, out of the thousands of landlords in every city, 70% of them are just complete garbage? Or are you like me and you believe, okay, well, the grand majority of them are doing everything right and you never hear about them, but you have a few bad apples, okay? So anyway, let's get into this article. This article is coming from DakotaNewsNow.com, and it says, Problem Tenants. A landlord shares struggles and advice. Let's get into it. The affordable housing market remains tight in Sioux Falls. Recently, we shared some of the issues tenants have faced with out-of-state landlords, but some landlords in Sioux Falls have been dealing with issues themselves. You know what? It isn't always a landlord's fault, said landlord Brian Johnson. Piles of garbage greeted Johnson when he opened the door of his rental home following the departure of a 5-year-long tenant. I tried to make affordable housing for people, but when they come in and completely destroy a place, it's hard to do that, Johnson expressed. And that is exactly the sort of thing I'm talking about. This is the reason why the rents are higher than they need to be, because we have problem tenants. And when you have a tenant who tears up your property, well, guess what? We have to cover our losses, and we do that by inflating the rents. We have to inflate the rents up higher because we expect there to be damages. We expect there to be a loss of rental income at some point in time. We expect there to be vacancy loss, okay? And if we don't keep our rents up higher, then we will lose. We will lose. Now, I know people are saying, oh, well, your mortgage, taxes, and insurance and all your expenses only add up to X amount. Let's say it adds up to $1,000 a month, right? And I'm like, well, don't forget, we're not doing this out of the kindness of our hearts. We deserve to make a profit on top of that. And if you don't think so, well, then here's the thing, right? Then if our business doesn't deserve to make a profit, no business deserves to make a profit. And we're going to live in a communist society. And that's a failing society. It's a complete travesty of our property rights, okay? The property rights in this country are written into the Constitution. And I don't believe in communism. He filled the dumpster more times than he wanted to count, then started on repairs. I spent $23,000 redoing this, Johnson said. The gas shut off in the wintertime. They cut a hole in the glass and put a random stovepipe out the window so they can heat the bedroom. This isn't the first time he said he has been blindsided. So yeah, imagine 23 grand worth of repairs after a single tenant moved out. Now, I don't know about what he was charging for rent, but 23 grand would have basically cut all of the profit that I made for the entire 5 years those people lived there. And it is almost impossible to go after those tenants and try to get that money back, okay? So you can sit there and say, I'm going to take your security deposit. Who the heck has a $23,000 security deposit? Almost nobody. He might have had $1,000 on these tenants, right? But I'm highly doubtful that he's going to be able to call up his credit agency and be like, hey, or his debt collector, go after these people and get my 22 grand for the damages they did. No, it's not going to happen. The one lady took one room and just made a litter box on it and just threw the litter right on the floor, Johnson claimed. Adding to the frustration, Johnson said he wasn't able to get the help he had hoped for when he called the police. It's like it's a civil matter, but if you're in a hotel, if you did that, you'd go to jail for destruction of property. But we assess landlords. We can't get any help on that, Johnson explained. Officer Sam Clemens with the Sioux Falls Police Department said it's the same law for tenants or hotel guests. The problem is proving that there was intent to cause harm to property. So here's my question, right? This police officer, right? I'm not going to sit here and say that the police officer wasn't giving the correct answer, right? But in reality, and keep in mind, I'm a law enforcement officer too, right? In reality, the police aren't going to help you with this sort of situation ever. Okay? You're not going to get any help whatsoever if a tenant damages your property and then runs away, okay? They're not going to come in there and say, oh, well, look at these holes in the wall. Yeah, we can definitely charge them with property damage. No, they're not going to do that. They're going to be like, hey, this is a civil matter. We're not going to even step in here or even try to figure out if this is actual criminal damage. We're going to throw up our hands in defeat immediately. That's what they do, okay? That's what all of these police departments do. So the landlord is technically right. And the police officer, is given we would treat it the same if it was a hotel. No, you wouldn't. Let's be honest here and say the truth, that you would push this landlord to go the civil route to sue the tenant to try to get damages back. That's the truth. That information is sent to, the city attorney or the state's attorney office for review. And ultimately, they're the ones that decide whether or not charges will be filed, if at all, Clemens said. Attorney General Marty Jackley's office fields calls about problem landlords and tenants. Typically, when it's a landlord situation, the question is, what does it take to evict the tenant? The answer is simple. It's the 3-day eviction notice, and it starts the process. To our advantage, if you get them evicted, they have to pay for all your attorney fees, but then you're right back to square one. They don't have any money in the first place, Johnson said. Yeah, they got to pay the attorney fees. So somebody who's broke and has no money, who couldn't pay you rent, guess what? They're going to have to pay your attorney fees. Well, you're out of luck, okay? You're out of luck. You're not likely to get any lost rent back. You're not likely to get any of the money for the property damage back. And you're most likely not going to get your attorney fees back. So this is why a lot of landlords, they just say, as long as you leave and don't come back, I'm not going to even go to the courts. I'm not going to go through the eviction process because that's just more money lost for me. That's just more money lost. And fighting the case is stupid. So just give me my keys back. I'll go get the repairs done and we'll call it a day. Okay, so yeah, a lot of landlords, they end up not even pursuing, eviction or giving up on the eviction process halfway through. This is part of the reason, though, why I believe that it is important that landlords have access to eviction records, even if the eviction wasn't fully completed, okay? Johnson isn't going to rent his house again and plans to put it up for sale. All of us landlords got to go to a class for 2 hours to teach us how to be landlords, while they have to teach some of these people how to just be human beings, not to see the way they live, Johnson said. He believes this is the right time to sell all of his properties. Like I said, I'm trying to get out of it, and I just hold good luck lots of the other landlords, and I hope the city kind of looks at them and they're not always at fault, Johnson said. And this is the end result, okay? When we're dealing with bad tenants, when we're dealing with bureaucracy, when we're dealing with laws that hurt us, they end up with landlords like this guy here, right? Who are saying, I'm done. I'm selling my properties. I am not going to do this anymore. There's nobody who can force me to stay into business. And if I'm not making money, if the tenants are just tearing my places up, if the government decides what I can charge for rent or who I can evict or when I can evict them, then it's not worth it. And I could just invest in the stock market. If I want to make an investment, I could just put my money in stocks instead or into other investments. So yeah, I feel bad for this guy. I feel really bad for this guy, right? But this is the inevitable consequence. And a lot of people, they don't understand these sort of things.